Someone's been working in the lab late at night. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. It's Halloween week. That means tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, is the 2023 Halloween special. However, to warm up to our fun treat this year, let's look at these spooky ones. Alright, so this one was listed by Manchester Music Mill over on Reverb for about $3,200. They called it the Frankenpaul. So at first glance, you're like, okay, yeah, I see what they're trying to do. Dr. Frankenstein's monster. We've got some stitching right here, looking like his forehead. We've got some interestingly aged hardware, including this bridge pickup and kind of a lighter aged neck pickup. We've got this weird double rhythm and treble thing going on. Some additional stitchings there. It's just kind of a gimmick, right? No. Do you see this? It is multiply binding. It should be about 7 layers going on. But then when you go here, it's a single ply layer. What the description says is this is literally a mashup guitar. So somebody took a Les Paul Customs body, sliced this part off of it, and then took this chunk off of a Les Paul Standards body, glued it on, and then did the faux stitching effect to give it the whole Frankenstein look. And then if you continue on over here, this spot doesn't have any binding, so that might have came off of like a Les Paul Studio. And then we have some sort of a 3-ply binding, you know, like on an ES345. Then check your neck. There's no binding on it at all. It appears to be an ebony board with trapezoid inlays. So I don't know about you guys, but that looks like a 90s era Les Paul Studios neck. It could also be early 2000s from like an Arctic White studio. Then you get to the headstock. They went ahead and threw the monster on it, just in case you didn't get the reference already. You've got a really cool aged-looking truss rod cover. You've got a slight ghastly green glow over your logo. Your tuners are extra yellow. Now, if you're looking at his neck bolts saying, come on, we should have had the bolts for the tuners, you might have missed it earlier. They did use bolt strap buttons. Appears to be both top and bottom. But let's see what they did on the back. Definitely looks a little bit more rustic here. Got a really spooky reddish green vibe going on. So let's check our binding. It appears to all be custom until, again, the standard that wouldn't have any binding on the back. Now, is it totally possible that they just changed the style of binding or used a scrap piece of wood to create it, and it's not really different Les Pauls put together? Maybe, but it kind of seems like this was a dumpster dive guitar and they just put it back together. That is the fate of a lot of defective Les Pauls. They just get bandsawn on, although usually not like this. And my friends, the fun is not over yet. We can see it's got the mahogany neck. Again, you got a little bit of green and red, but as we go up here, to me, this design looks painted on. If you go right here, you can tell that's actually real thread. This doesn't look like real screws on the back and real lacing. You can also tell it's got some of that going on here, but according to the description, there is actually a headstock repair there. They just didn't go the full mile because, yeah, that might not necessarily be comfortable to play if you did this for real. But hey, would you look at that? We can see the serial number dating it to 1992. Perfect. So knowing that that is a studio's neck, that means we have a new faceplate here because we've got the Gibson Mother of Pearl logo, likely from a Les Paul Standard. What an interesting beast. Might not be the prettiest thing you've ever seen, but it's got a story. But to match this guitar, we also have a custom case called Frankenpaul with a little bit of lightning and some extra black paint to hide the Epiphone logo or whatever it was there. Unfortunately, the inside is not that special. So what is the history on this thing? Apparently, when it was first brought into a Bluesman vintage guitar shop in Nashville, they thought it was just a Les Paul studio. Maybe it was like completely finished over, and then they had stripped it down to find all this other weird stuff. So it's that shop that refinished the guitar and made it the Frankenpaul that you see today. And then they are echoing back here that they believe this was factory second guitars. That's why Gibson doesn't throw them away anymore. They get shipped off to be burnt, so people don't make stuff like that. But before we continue, we need to have a word from our sponsor, Sweetwater. Sweetwater is a great place to buy your stuff, but it's not just guitars. You can also buy amps, effects pedals, patch leads, whatever you need for general music making. They are your place and they're happy to ship it to your door, or you can visit their Fort Wayne, Indiana location. And if you happen to be local, they have tons of events all the time. They also do monthly giveaways that you can follow the link in the description to become a part of. Thank you, Sweetwater, for being a continuous sponsor of my show. And now let's get back to our guitar. Next up in our spooky tale, we need to visit the Music Zoo. Look what they pulled up. The Gibson Custom Shop James A. Willis Edgar Allan Poe the Raven Les Paul. This is another one that showed up, I think, a year and a half ago. It popped up on Reverb for about an hour before it sold for 10 grand, and it actually went to a collector that I've sold a few guitars to. There was talks of maybe documenting this guitar, but it never ended up happening, and it appears he's now sold it on to the Music Zoo. This is an interesting piece from a historical perspective, but honestly, I think the name is the coolest part, rather than what ended up being done here, because basically a Les Paul standard that somebody took like a wood router and just did little zoopity-doo everywhere. Doesn't necessarily make a design that I'm familiar with. I just think it's really cool that there's an actual Gibson custom shop Edgar Allan Poe signature, I guess you could say. So apparently back in 2012, Gibson had an artist in residence who created a few instruments only for the Music Zoo. I didn't know that up until today, but his name was James A. Willis, and they called this one The Raven, after the very famous story. And apparently it's a hand-rubbed midnight blue finish, likely meaning it's satin. So it's kind of cool how it circles back a decade later. Oddly enough, it seems to have lost its original case at one point in time. This time, they're asking $20,000 for it. But that certainly works for our October theme, but sadly, no bats in flight showed up this year. Still looking for a purple one. If anybody has one and you're interested in trading something, please let me know. But the last of our top 3 for tonight is this interestingly modified Gibson SG7 Dark. You heard me right, there are 7-string Gibsons out there. They actually existed all the way back in the golden era of Gibson, believe it or not, but we'll talk about that one another day. You can find 7-string Flying Vs, there's 7-string Les Pauls, there's also these SGs. But if you want to see one of these up close and personal, I do have the Angel of Death on my channel. But check out the artwork that somebody customized their ebony version with. Definitely very spooky plague-like artwork. I like the inclusion of this little dead rat guy. And then yeah, we've got some other skeletons and brains and matches. This rat's still alive, just without one eye. Normally, I wouldn't think this would look good on a Gibson guitar, but since it's kind of a doomy chuggy 7-string guitar, it works. The vibes match. And they've replaced our pickups with Seymour Duncans, and it's all blacked out. And then we've got a matching design on the headstock, kind of an interesting tombstone-like design for our truss rod cover, signifying only 7 years. Certainly not a piece for everybody, but it's unique. But hey, we're not even done. I didn't even realize they did it on the back too. I like the art style. It's kind of Cuphead-like. And okay, I see what that is. It's a full-on skeleton on the neck. They are asking a premium for this art piece at $7,000. But now to end out tonight's episode, I've got 5 more quick ones for you. Check out this made-to-measure Cobra burst. We've documented Cobra burst on the channel before, including the original Cobra. But this one, the flame top is so unique. It's such a wide flame, but yet you got this dead space right in the middle. It's extra dark, and the whole double staining feature of the top really pops it. It makes this one look a little bit more evil than some of the other ones, because the hues can vary example to example. But this is one of those times where a slightly imperfect top actually works incredibly well. Sadly, nothing too interesting on the back, it's just black. This is a brand new creation out of the Gibson custom shop, so it was sold for a brand new price of $7,799. And if you really want it today, I'm sorry, it's already gone. But this one was up in Canada. It was kind of an interesting one. It was listed as a 2002 one-off gold Flying V. He believes this to be the factory original finish. Personally, I don't buy the story because it's nickel pickups and chrome hardware. Gibson wouldn't have shipped something stock like that, which makes me think everything else was redone. But I wanted to feature this again because it's got the cool crescent moon inlays. That only happened in 2002 and early 2003 for the initial Faded series. They had a satin finish, and it was very popular for people to take those and refinish them due to the awesome ebony fretboard that the first year examples had, and then give them like a cool custom finish. Now, I will say, the finish work here does look pretty good. Is it possible it was some sort of a limited edition and somebody swapped out pickups? Maybe, but we don't have a lot to go off of. But it's pretty cool nonetheless. It has since sold. But if you liked Cobra Burst, you might like this custom shop Dark Knight. We've seen these things on the show before. They're just so cool. Every time one pops up, I have to share it. So they're basically gray widows that have awesome figure tops. They're a Les Paul custom that's been all blacked out. So they've got the finish over top of the binding. You've got the black mother of pearl inlays with the ebony fretboard and black binding on top of that. Many of them do have the Bigsbys on them. Interestingly enough, this is one of the versions that has the standard headstock, except for it actually has the figured veneer on it. That's kind of strange. But yet it's got the figured neck, making it extra special, as that is 3 pieces of maple. That one listed at $6,000, which I thought was pretty fair for one in supposed mint condition. Our next one is a rare color from the 90s. I need to get a clean one of these in my collection, but this is what is known as dark Wineburst. Nobody ever lists them correctly because unless you have the old pamphlets or you're really into 90s Gibson history, you're just not going to remember what this one is called. We've documented them on the show in the past. It's just a nice wine red color that has a slightly darker burst. You could also kind of get away with calling it like Blood Burst for Spooky Guitars Month. This one's only listed at $3,400, which is a fantastic deal until you learn it has a headstock repair. And then lastly, a Diablo yellow Blackout chambered showed up. I do have a review and demo on the red one, and I wouldn't mind a complete set of the chambered Blackout series. It's basically everything that purists hate thrown onto one Les Paul. Solid color, bright out there finish, rich light fretboard, blacked out inlays, obnoxious matching headstock, and EMG pickups. And to top it all off, as the name suggests, it's chambered. For our spooky fact of this one, we've got these strange scratches going up the neck. He claims they're not all that deep, doesn't affect playability, but it's there for whatever reason. They're straight down, so his assumption is the original owner had this done as a way of guiding you throughout the neck. Sometimes you don't have all the answers. I give this guy props for at least disclosing it because there's so many people that wouldn't. What this is it's a 3-piece maple neck, so these are the seam lines of the neck showing. It doesn't happen on all of them, but it does happen on a few. It usually means there's a little bit of movement. Because like if this starts to really open up, then you've got a problem, but it's mainly just a really bad cosmetic eyesore at this point. So that's why I decided to pass on this one. But if you could care less, this is starting to get to a good price. All right, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed our spooky episode tonight. I will see you tomorrow, 7 p.m. sharp. Set your alarm. You don't want to miss this treat of an episode. Take care. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every day. And you might even enjoy this next one.